the state were not there to tell you that it's a real love. If I hear this correctly, you love someone enough, your ends meet each other, and yet without the consent of the bureaucrat, it just can't be done over there. You're going to have to go back to the washroom. We don't think that since time immemorial, human beings have needed third-party consents in the form of some legislation. We think that love is ingrained in the human character and that it does know no boundaries. And to the point where we recognize that, and we recognize that an institution as endemically discriminatory as the form of marriage we have today will still stand unless we abolish it completely. We have to let it fall on its face if we believe in the basic principles of fairness, of equality, of freedom for consenting adults within our society. It's also good for Colin, and I thank him daily, for going ahead and bringing up the legal rationale, because that's what I will bring to you today. The fact that the principles of legality and of justice say that the institution of marriage that exists right now doesn't stand. But before we get into this, I really want to get into what Colin said with respect to talking about the investment. He says that we allow for tax dollars to be taken from people who wish to live their lives unmolested because it's an investment in your society. And that the beneficiaries of this directly, of course, are going to be the first couples that we deem to be worth being married. There's one problem I have with this. You have two autonomous people, and the only reason why the state is giving you any tax break whatsoever, any subsidy, is because you have now become a means to the state's ends. Because you can develop good progeny for us, you can develop future taxpayers for us. Thank you so much. You've become a tool for social engineering. Where in God's name is your autonomy there? You've only masked it in golden handcuffs under the guise of some state-sanctioned form of marriage. We don't think that that's right. And we think that to the point that even the winners are actually the losers here. It's simply masked in some terrible incentive. That should go away as well. Furthermore, he tells you that there's some pragmatic social behavioral problems with here. He talks to you, of course, about the fact that polygamy and incest and other difficulties that we have here will help ignite the culture wars in the absence of a natural arbiter, to which we say we live in a society that's built on the marketplace of ideas. Your right not to be offended is slightly less than my right to leave you unmolested but perform my act of love, so long as the other party is unconsenting in that form. Let's move on to this. I'm going to talk to you about now the legal rationale that exists behind here, because the opposition would like to couch you in this argument that says that gay marriage cannot exist outside of the institution of marriage being allowed here. And we have a huge problem with that for two reasons. One is we say that the institution of marriage as exists right now exists under the clause of the due process. Now this seems a little arcane, and I'm going to apologize for the advance, but this is where we really think that that institution would abolish from there. Why do we say it? Because with major Supreme Court cases, the due process looks to tradition. That's where you have to be. If it's Dred Scott, good for you. Plessy v. Ferguson, separate but equal, I'm all for it. The problem with that is that in the state of Alaska, we have a constitutional amendment that says only a man and a woman can be married. So if the institution of marriage from its very inception in our society is based on looking at tradition, all the social benefits they want to take about evolution doesn't stand a chance under their model. The only way you can get those benefits is if you bring the whole rotten structure down from its bad cornerstone. That's the only way that it can happen from there. Right now, Colin, thank you. Secondly, what we would tell you from them is that the only form of doctrine that could pervade and exist as an institution of marriage would be the Equal Protection Clause. And the Equal Protection Clause quite simply means that there can be no exclusions whatsoever. But as James brought to you in his speech, and as Colin actually affirmed, we have no problem excluding some individuals, because even if they say that we will have same-sex couples be allowed into their new form of marriage, we're still disincentivizing single couples, to the point where the Equal Protection Clause, the only legal cause that has any form of sustaining the institution of marriage, can't be applied, because there's no way that you cannot exclude single couples. That institution of marriage on its face falls flat as well from there. Before I go on, go ahead, Drew.
So by that same logic, we're discriminating against everyone who doesn't own a home. I am a victim of discrimination because I pay taxes, and I pay more because I'm not a homeowner. But James told you it's okay to prefer homeownership. It's okay to prefer going to school. So by their logic, Akis contradicting.
Really? I would like to hear what you just said about your POI and James' response earlier, because your right, the decision to own a home, is slightly less than my ability to engage in an act of love, because that act of love is endemic to my identity. Choosing if I want a duplex or a townhouse is slightly different. I know we have a lot of semantics to throw around, but let's be rational, please. So why do I bring that up? Why do we have this cold logic here? Well, the only thing that we can live with is the cold letter of the law, which is why James told you that social contracts are great. Why is that? that? Because they're clear and written in the language of the law. If you have consenting adults that cannot give any criminal prohibitive acts, because obviously that would be illegal, they are allowed to actually engage in their acts and be allowed to do that there. Why do we say that? Because we live in a pluralistic society of people having different value systems, coming from different ethnicities, coming from different religions. Your value is very different than my value. And the law has to say that we don't have morality in our law, we have justice. And justice is experience, as Oliver Wendell Holmes said. That's been the source of our law, not some idea that your morality can trump mine. It's a fair arbiter. And what James brought to you is absolutely correct here, that when the state takes on the role that it should not do, that of preferential treatment for social utility. I will step in here, I will determine who will be my winner, who will be my loser, and you will all be winners because you'll have roads plowed. That's a real prostitution of your rights, ladies and gentlemen. That's not one that we should endorse today. Yes, it's a little bit malign. Yes, it's a little bit abstract, but these are the things that we have to ask ourselves, because too often, as James was right, the culture wars love to ask the second or the third question. They don't ask the primary question, which is, why is the institution of marriage important to be state-sponsored in the first place? Why is it that the marketplace of ideas can say that a relationship that's done in a church does not need to be sanctified by the Department of the Interior? And why is that relationship any more important than my deep love and affection for a friend, if that's a platonic relationship as well? The state has no right to make an endorsement in a call. The state has no right, at the end of the day, to tell you what form of love is better than the other. That abhors and corrupts the very virtue of your identity. So for the reasons that we have brought to you today, the fact that the legal side of this argument comes down on us, the fact that the institution, under no application other than abolition, can stay within our state, it has to be thrown out the door. In order for us to be able to respect the autonomy of the citizens within there, we stand very proudly in proposition.
Ah.